That's right.
And it covers all the aspects of human rights law. There's chapters on affirmative action, immigration, and education.
Good.
And there's one on hate, on hate propaganda, racial slurs, racist expressions. And I talk in there about what are the different legal protections for different kinds of expressions. For example, there's the Criminal Code for hate. There's the Human Rights Act for hatred in Manitoba and Saskatchewan, and for expressions that discriminate in other provinces. So I talk about all these different things.
Okay.
Now, in the chapter on hate, I talk about different kinds of hate propaganda in Canada, and I talk about the whole concept of hate. Do you want me to just ask you, like, first of all, is there a difference in your mind between hate and other kinds of racist expressions? I mean, is there such a thing as hate propaganda? Do you know what I mean?
There is, yeah, and the Germans have been the victims of it for the last 50 years at least. I will show you some examples of it.
Okay.
I will give you some printed examples that you can look at. I will show you some TV examples which were broadcast. We just saw 2 weeks ago one called The Old Gun, in which the Germans...
The Old
Gun.
The Old Gun.
Now that was shown by famous players theatres in all the theatres in Canada, all the famous players theatres about 3-4 years ago, together back to back with a thing called the California Reich. In it, there are such scenes where the Germans, every branch of the German military, bar none, SS, the regular German army and so on, go on this mass orgy in this Catholic church in France and raid mothers and daughters right on the church pew under the crucifix and go on to this orgy. And then in the end, they incinerate a very lovely looking Romy Schneider after they have brutally raped her, of course, and incinerate her, and she turns into this grotesque, mummified, oozing body, you know? While the Germans are, as per usual, grinning ear to ear about this ghoulish evil deed that they have committed.
Okay, so there is such a thing as hate propaganda, and you've given me
and many of these authors of this, for instance, these were this particular film that was just re-shown on late night television 2 weeks ago in Canada. In other words, it was piped into homes. You didn't have to make the effort to go to a movie. It was piped into these homes, broadcast over the networks that, after all, get their authority from the Canadian Radio and Television Commission, work under the strictures of the Canadian Radio and Television Commission, under their guidelines. Now, I couldn't put Jude's on a Canadian radio and TV program without... It's just a Nazi movie that stereotypes the Jews negatively, you know? Based on a novel by a Jew, of course, but nevertheless.
Okay.
You see, what is good for the goose is good for the gander.
Okay, let me ask you a question now. Let me get straight. So you think there is such a thing as hate?
And it's largely Jewish produced to a great extent.
So you see hate as something that's largely Jewish produced and anti.
In our case, and anti-German.
Anti-German.
There is no such thing. This is a subterfuge that these hate mongers like to use. I'll give you a perfect example for it, and you can check into that if you wish and want to be thorough about it. I participated in a thing called the Kowalski Report by the CBC. It's a feature program by the CBC, broadcast 1977, where this CBC documentary TV team went to the head of the Canadian Legion, child psychologist, got a producer of comic books on the telephone, went to Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, kindergartens and Canadian high schools and regular schools. They found out that not a single child interviewed in 1977 on that program could make the difference between Nazis and Germans. They virtually thought they were interchangeable terms. Therefore, all propaganda directed against Nazis, obviously for all those children, which was a cross-section of Toronto children, meant Germans.
Okay.
Proof number one, hold it, no, proof number one, that's my proof number one. Proof number two is during the Holocaust, the showing of the film Holocaust.
Yeah.
German-Canadian newspapers, German-Canadian businesses, German-Canadian social clubs were threatened with bombs, arson. German-Canadian school children were threatened with murder, beatings. Some were in effect beaten and were spat at. No Chinese kids during that particular week, and no Chinese stores, and no Chinese newspapers, to my knowledge, or Hungarian newspapers, received bomb threats and arson threats and so on. So in the public's mind, all this anti-Nazi, in quote, propaganda took the form of bomb threats, arson threats, and threats of violence against German Canadian businesses in 1980.
Okay, but to bomb threats and scares and assaults and so on are one thing, right?
No, they were the result of hate propaganda produced and induced by media-born hatred against an identifiable group, in this case Germans, because the public, whoever these nutcases were, did not pick on the Chinese. That's my point. What you are seeing with me is a reaction against this hate. You see, nobody ever talks about the perpetrators of hate against which we defend ourselves. We are reacting against media-born hate and defending ourselves against it.
Like, would you call, for example, the TV film, The Holocaust?
It's a hate program from the beginning to the end.
Why is that?
Because it's based on nothing but half-truths, outright falsehoods, historic lies, and it is called a docudrama because if it was a documentary, they would have to be more truthful.
In what way wasn't it truthful?
The whole concept, for instance, of Germans burning Jews in a synagogue, the way it starts out, never happened. There is no historic proof for that whatsoever. And the only documentation that is being shown are about a 5-minute sequence of washed out grainy slides. The rest is an orgy of anti-German hate, some 18 hours. Produced, created and written by well-known Zionist Jews. Now, we are the victims of this.
The Germans are the victims.
Exactly right.
So, I mean, most people, when they think of hate propaganda, admittedly, they do think of...
Of Ernst Zundel and Jim Keekstra, right?
And Keekstra.
And you know why that is? You know why that is? It is the media that has been peddling hate propaganda and has institutionalized hate propaganda for so long. No, for so long they have been hating. And that when then finally a civil rights activist like myself comes along and tries to apply the laws of this land to gain equal protection under the law, then we are, of course, like in the old fable, destroy the accuser. It's much easier for the media that profits to the tune of billions of dollars annually. Billions of dollars annually with Holocaust propaganda. Pardon me?
What's in it for them?
What's in it for them? Do you know how much revenue the film Holocaust generated? Do you know how much a commercial cost to advertise on the winds of war? $580,000 for a 1-minute commercial. We are talking about productions that are worth tens of millions of dollars. They spend $25 million apparently just to promote the blasted film.
Well, when you say that hate is largely Jewish produced, okay,
against my ethnic group,
against Germans,
maybe some hate against others is produced by somebody else. I don't know about that.
What would you call something like what are those anti-Catholic comic books, chick publications, whatever they are? I mean, is that hate?
Is that hate?
Most people think that.
I think it's the work of somebody that is crazy. You know,
would
and
you
I mean.
Call that hate propaganda?
Well, you know, would I call a crazy man crazy, or would I call him a hater? He's a hateful, crazy man. This is pathological, this material. But I would suggest to you that you check into who produces these anti-Catholic publications, who are the owners of the corporations, and also what their names were at birth.
What would I find?
Well, you are the researcher, you got the grant, you do the research for it. And you will be very surprised who produces this anti-Catholic stuff. It certainly is not Germans.
No, I don't think anyone thinks it is.
All right, no, but I'm saying to you, why don't you do yourself? Now that you're interested to speak.
Yeah. Is it in the States someplace?
That's right. It comes from Arizona. Find out who the man that originated this most vicious, reasoned spate of anti-Catholic propaganda, what his ethnicity was at birth. Not what he calls himself today, but what it was at birth. And you'll be very surprised. So, okay, now carry on.
Some homework for me. All right. I guess I have problems with this concept.
Of course you would have.
Being largely Jewish produced. I mean.
Well, okay, Mordecai Richler is
I'm not
interviewed.
involved in...
No, Mordecai Richler is introduced with a bold 1-inch headline in the Toronto Star. He gets an entire page virtually. We have to be gentle to people. And in the article he says, the Holocaust being a fact, and the Jewish babies or babies being fried in the fat of their parents. No, that's being gentle with people. Not even in Nuremberg did anybody accuse the Germans of all the dastardly crimes. That was one that they overlooked. Believe me, if the Germans had done that, the Allies would have brought that up. But here is Mordecai Richler, a famous Canadian poet, obviously Jewish according to all the Jewish records, and he says that in the Toronto Star. Two things. The editor lets this slanderous remark against the German people, that's what it is, because it means that the Germans in effect are cannibals frying Jewish babies in the fat of their parents. That's what he said, in effect, in this thing.
Talk about isn't there a difference between talking about the Germans doing it or a political group? I mean, Nazis doesn't translate into Germans automatically.
Well, it did with all those school kids. It certainly did with the reaction to the film Holocaust in the late 1970s. That's my point. That's your first thing. If you want to do yourself a favor and the ministry a favor, and Mr. Teitelbaum, inform him a little, and the Canadian Jewish Congress people, go down to the corner of Bay and Yonge Street, okay? And you stand there and you get a permit from the city and do it for 2-3 days, and ask all the passers-by, old and young, explain to me the difference between Nazis and Germans, okay? And then you'll be very surprised how many people in this country cannot make the difference.
See, I have no problem with that.
No, of course not. But you say you are a trained attorney. How many attorneys are there as compared to the rest of the population? You see, the great mass of the people are the ones that are asked to go to war. They are the ones that are the cannon fodder. They are the ones that are the consumers of 50 million comic books each month. And they are the ones that advertisers appeal to when they put commercials on Winds of War, Holocaust, and so on.
So,
not
you
you.
say that your stuff is defensive then, rather than...
Totally is. Always has been. Absolutely true. You can check my files.
How do you feel when people call you anti-Semitic? I mean,
how do I feel about it? Outraged. It's the oldest game in town that what you do is you don't answer the charge, you slander your accuser.
Do you feel that
that's exactly what is happening.
True?
The Canadian Jewish Congress not once has come to reason with me. I have offered to them through the ethnic squad. I can show you files and files of invitations that have gone out to Jews for the last 25 years by Ernst Zundel, before I was notorious, when I was just another nice fellow, you know, before they could say they wouldn't dignify me. Well, they're going to dignify me January 7th in my trial, you know.
How do you feel about that? Do you want to
I think it's typical. The Canadian government has not once seen fit to apply the law in regards to hate literature to protect the German ethnic group. And since I'm the one in the forefront that is saying to them, you do your damn job for which you are paid also with our taxpayers' money, it's much easier for them to take me out of circulation, they think. But they've got a few surprises coming, I guarantee it to you.
What does that mean?
The case is not over yet.
Yeah.
You know, just like I won my postal case in Germany, where they seized my bank accounts and raided over 2,000 homes, and then lost the case in the Ordinary Court of Law, and lost the appeal that they launched against it. And just like they lost the Canadian Jewish Congress, Ben Kafetz being up in Ottawa together with Sabina Citron, just like they lost on that one, let's just see what's going to happen on January 7th. You know, their track record is not very good. It has nothing to do with hate literature, and there's a very good reason for it. McMurtry said in the House of Commons last year in July or in June that 6 senior officials of his ministry are scanning and perusing everything that I've written. Now, I wrote to him and I said, if that's what you're doing with our taxpayers' money, then please have the decency to issue guidelines, since you obviously issued guidelines to those 6 senior officials. Issue them to me, to all the other members of the media, and then we can tell what you consider hate, and then we won't offend against the law. I consider it a form of entrapment by Mr. McMurtry, politically motivated, because he represents a specific writing and is of a certain ideological bend, calling himself a Christian Zionist. You know, the man has far too much politicized the administration of justice in this province. In any other society, at any other time, he would have been impeached.
Do you think so?
I certainly do. In the Western concept, yes.
Can we get back to something here at the... All right, we've been talking about what is hate propaganda, and you think that there is such a thing as hate propaganda. And you're not sure about whether Chick publications would be. You don't think yours is. You think something like your publication.
If my material had been hate propaganda and been deemed hate propaganda, I have been in this country for 25 years. Long ago, the hate law provision has been on the books since 1967. I have not yet even been charged under it.
Well, that may be because... I mean...
No, it may be because I am innocent. Let's also look at it that way. Never mind the media bullshit.
Well, you're always innocent until...
All right then. Why is the media treating me as if I am guilty?
Do you have anything? I mean, what do you... I haven't had a really look. What do you...
You're working with the Canadian Jewish Congress? They've got a whole dirt file. Have a look at it. They have a far more complete file on me than I do. What do I talk about?
In your publications, what do you...
I talk about the lies that these people peddle. I object, for instance, to Mordecai Richler saying that the Germans boiled babies in the fat of their parents. It's an absolute bold-faced, racist, anti-German, slanderous lie. That's what it is.
He said the Germans boil...
Well, that's he got space in the Toronto. He got space in the Toronto Star. I can give you a photocopy of it. Now the Toronto Sun had a whole-page interview with a woman living up in Forest Hill. She said she was forced to eat human stew in Auschwitz. Now, all the stories that I've ever heard about Auschwitz was that there was watery soups, potato or cabbage or something like this. Suddenly they have stew, meat, right? And she was forced to eat human stew. Not a court in 1945 or since anywhere in the world has ever charged the German nation, German people or German individuals with feeding their prisoners human stew. Yet in Toronto, the Toronto Sun publishes this in 1977. And when I asked if they retract it, do they retract it? All press councils to the contrary, all safeguards, all the ministries, all these people putting their fat derrieres up there for high salaries, all the human rights watchdogs, not a single one that I appeal to, and I have hundreds of letters I sent to these organizations, has ever once come down on those people. Do you know why? Out of fear.
Fear of?
Out of fear. The power of Zionist individuals and lobby members, pressures, bombs going off. I had 2,000 Zionists demonstrating outside here in May 1981. Now, what did they say? They said, justice now, justice now. Let's storm the place. Let's burn the place down. We have them on film, videotapes and audio tapes, okay? You know what it was about? It was about the same charge that I distribute racist material, neo-Nazi material, and all this stuff, of which I was unconditionally cleared by a West German court after they had their riots and their agitation and their threats to kill me. 6 months before the verdict in a court was in. I am the victim.
What was the case in Germany? There was a case in Germany?
That's right. There was a case against me in Germany where the West German authorities, again under the pressure of Zionism and the Zionist lobby, seized my bank account in West Germany.
Can I ask you something? When you say Zionism, are you talking about Jewish people or Zionists?
Ask the Canadian Jewish Congress if they consider themselves a Zionist organization. Look under the telephone book.
Well,
what is a Zionist organization and what is not a Zionist organization?
I mean,
Zionism claims to be speaking for the Jewish people today. They make the claim, bold-faced as it is, that we are one. They speak for the Jewish people.
So do you see these people that were outside as Zionists or as Jews?
Well, the Jewish Defense League was out there screaming and shouting. The Jewish Students' Union was out there screaming and shouting. Survivor organizations were out there screaming and shouting. And if you look in the roster of Jewish organizations, see if they consider themselves Zionists.
Why is it important to call them Zionists rather than Jews? I mean,
why is it? Because your friends in the
around
Canadian Jewish Congress and your Mr. Teitelbaum up in Ottawa and Mr. Kaplan and all the other people who are abusing the privilege that the Canadian people have bestowed upon them by giving them power, which they then pervert by using against individuals like Jim Keegstra or Ernst Zundel, finding us guilty before we have been found guilty in the court of law, removing my mail-in privileges for a whole year.
Was what Keegstra did okay in your mind?
Look, Keegstra is doing no more than 90,000 other teachers do across this country every single day. He is teaching his version of history. My kids are being lied to and have been lied to and 1,750,000 German Canadians in this country who pay taxes to school boards and so on are getting a history thrown into their face, which are nothing but distortions and World War II propaganda lies posing as history, and yet that's okay. As long as the lies that are told are your lies or Jewish lies, it's okay.
Well, let's forget for 1 minute. Let's sort out the issues here. Let's forget.
No, this is the point. That you asked me, is what Kriegspreis doing okay? As long as it's okay for Jewish teachers and for Gentile teachers peddling the Zionist Jewish lies in our schools, contrary to the facts, then it must be okay also for one lone teacher in the hick town like Egtville, Alberta, where he taught for 14 years without any pogroms, without any riots, without a single Jew being harmed in those 14 years, must be okay. No, that's the other side of the coin. You see, you always in this society only get one side. We have a case now going on where a Jewish principal of a school slandered the Germans. A father, just like the parent of the kid in Kriegspreis class, wants to make something out of the case.
What, you lodged a complaint?
Yeah.
But
Has anything been hitting the newspapers? Of course not. You see, that's the point. That our complaints, McMurtry, I had written, registered letters, had hand-delivered letters, petitions to McMurtry to do something about the anti-German hate propaganda in the Canadian media and in textbooks and so on. Nothing has been done. But when the Jewish side feels that there is something that is offensive to them, we get police raids, we get confiscations of material, and we even get prosecutions. It is the unequal application of the law in this country which amounts to legal persecution.
Well, can we go back for 1 second to the Holocaust? Like, in your material, do you talk about the whole issue of whether the Holocaust happened? I mean,
Sure,
is
I
there
do.
Holocaust denial
Sure,
in
I
your
do.
material?
Sure, no, we don't deny that Jews were hurt. I'm all for Jews being compensated who were hurt. I certainly don't believe that Jews should be put in concentration camps just because they were Jews. But I can assure you that this was not German policy. Thousands of German Jews survived. As a matter of fact, according to the Canadian Jewish News, if you want to go and check into their files, they had published in 1983 or 82 that 4,300,000 and some thousand people are collecting pensions from Germany. Survivors, that is.
That's okay, isn't it?
That's fine, but then don't peddle to the world the lie that they were all killed, because there's only so many people to go around.
So you don't believe that people were killed? Jewish people were killed in World War II?
Of course some of them were killed. Some of them were killed undeservedly, and others were killed deservedly so.
Why is that?
Because they were saboteurs, they were partisans, even in the movie Holocaust. They're partisan heroes. We have survivors of the Holocaust bragging how many Germans that they killed. We have members of the Israeli Knesset, right interviewed here by Norm Perry on Channel 9, who said that they poisoned the bread for 12,000 SS officers who were defenseless prisoners, after the war was over.
Why is it important in your publications to talk about the Holocaust? What?
Because it's a despicable, slanderous, racist lie against the German people. Do you think I enjoy when my children ask me a question about history and say, your grandfather was in a war? Hey, Pops, did our grandfather, our granddaddy do something like that? And there's millions of Germans that have to face this question every day just to please a bunch of money-hungry, power-hungry, emotional nutcases. I should let my entire country and country's history go down in the history books as being a bunch of genocidal maniacs when we are totally innocent? Is perfectly ridiculous. I ought to get a medal. I ought to get the Governor General's Award for battling like I do. No, that's a fact.
Well,
it's not funny.
Going back to the Holocaust, then you think that something happened where people died, but what? But
as a direct consequence of war action, Jews died at the hands of American bombers. Sabina Citron said so herself.
You mean it has nothing to do with anti-Semitism?
Very little. Believe me. Very little. Very little. The Germans cooperated with Zionism There's just now a book out called The Transfer Agreement, written by a Jew called Black from Chicago. Of course, it's censored in Canada as per usual, but you can go down to the world's largest bookstore and you can get yourself a copy for $25. I recommend that you do. And it shows the collaboration behind the scenes and behind the headlines and underneath the headlines between the Nazi government and Zionist organizations. Business as usual, money was changing hands. Do you know that Zionists were trained in camps in Germany, in Nazi Germany, to be farmers, carpenters, and so on, that they would have a skill when they got to the Holy Land?
Well, let's go back, though, to this. I'm really very interested about the Holocaust and whether it happened. Or you say that it's important for you to...
The Holocaust as presented today in the media and in all these books that I have here is highly exaggerated. World War II, hate propaganda. The numbers are exaggerated. The methods are exaggerated, totally unfounded in some cases. Individual suffering is based on hearsay, and so on. You know, if these people were ever cross-examined in a court of law,
which people?
The Holocaust survivors that are spewing forth all these lies into the psychological bloodstream of this country and the whole Western world.
You think most Holocaust or all Holocaust survivors are lying about their?
I think that they are fantasizing. They have seen too many bloody films about the Holocaust. And their testimony virtually looks the same.
Have you ever
and they're very convincing. I can give you a very good case in point, okay? Frank Wallis, no, I'll give you a case in point. Frank Wallis, German-American, accused by Simon Wiesenthal and this gang of persecutors called Office of Special Investigations, created at the pressure of Zionist Congresswoman Holtzman. Now, he faced, I think it was 11 Jewish survivors, all of them under oath in a courtroom in Chicago, told such convincing stories about being persecuted, about how he stripped women in the village square, of how he stomped on the one woman's belly, she was highly pregnant, of how he beat to death one guy with a piece of lead pipe. The one lady even said she knew the Jewish high holiday that it took place, the bench he was sitting on, the house number of the house, the time of the day, the hour of the day, the village that it took place. It only turns out that in the appeal it came out that out of these 11 witnesses, 9 never were near the place. Some of them were not even in Poland during the entire Second World War. Yet, a Jewish judge by the name of Hoffman stripped Wallis of his citizenship, nearly had him deported from the United States, ruined the man's reputation. He was assaulted on the street and beaten to a pulp, has had 6 heart attacks, has spent his entire life savings, his life has been made ruinous, all on lying testimony.
And you think that
and this is symptomatic. It is I'm not saying all Holocaust survivors, because I am survivor. I'm also a survivor of the Holocaust, the American-inflicted Holocaust with the bombs and so on. You know.
Have you ever seen people walking around with numbers on their arms? I mean,
for $5 you can tattoo a number done on Bloor Street and Young Street.
And that's what it is.
Some of them have collected vast sums of money. I can give you one case in point. There is the famous Deutsch case, where an attorney had dozens of reparations attorneys working for him. And the case came out, was a big scandal in West Germany, only one of many. The Esterházy painting collection. The Germans were supposed to have robbed this Count Esterházy of millions of art treasures. And this Jewish attorney, Deutsch from Basel, was negotiating with the West German government. At stake were some 60 million German marks. Now that's a crime of some dimension. You know, there are not very many con games like this going on in town. It only turned out that when the first installment had already been paid by the Germans. Now, why were they paid? Were they under such terrific pressure, or were there such convincingly forged documents presented that this government agency already paid the first installment? The headlines burst onto the scene in Europe that the Kremlin returned the first installment of the Count Esterházy painting collection. Now, not only were the German people felt guilty, had to feel guilty for 30 years or 25 years of having stolen the art treasures of this innocent man, you know. We live, in many books this is still written, you know. Turns out that Deutsch was a crook trying to get 60 million marks for which he was not entitled to, or however many marks it was, already got the first installment, and we were innocent all along. Now here is one case in many. And again, I'm telling you, it is symptomatic of this whole issue. And they're going to overdo it.
But surely you know that most historians agree that the Holocaust did happen. And
Most historians do not agree. Most books written on the Holocaust, that's one of the interesting points, have not been written by historians. Certainly not by impartial historians. They are usually by special pleading Jewish writers like our friend Raoul Hilberg and like Elie Wiesel, head of the Holocaust Remembrance Committee or something in the United States, André Schwarzbart. We have even a case in France where the famous Klarsfeld couple cooperated in the publication of a list of deaths, whatever the emotional tear-jerking name was of the book. And all it did is they put all the names of those people who were deported to various concentration camps, and they called them list of death. Only turns out that amongst them was, for instance, just as a for instance, there will be undoubtedly thousands if the research was done, Simone Weil. Very much alive, very much a minister within the French government, and today, I believe, President of the European Parliament. Now, so careless and slipshod was their research that they included that particular lady in that book. Did anybody say, well, if this is the case with such a famous woman, which they could have checked cursorily just looking at it? Oh no. The lies are being perpetuated, and the German people's name and good name in history is being destroyed by a bunch of terrorists for profit.
Terrorists?
That's right. They're using psychological terrorism. This whole kehillah, this whole cabal of people who put out this garbage and who benefit from it.
Who is it? You mean there's some...
You ask me, I ask you. Who are the people that demonstrated outside the German consulates around the world when the reparation payments were going to cease? Who are they? You tell me. Suddenly, like magic, in Johannesburg, in Toronto, in Montreal, in Winnipeg, in Washington, there were all these demonstrations.
Is that unusual?
An internationally coordinated effort? Does that mean that suddenly thousands of people in hundreds of places get the same idea? You are supposed to be an attorney. By osmosis?
That doesn't strike me as that odd.
It was an orchestrated, organized effort to influence the policy of West Germany, and it was successful, unfortunately. You know? But I'm saying to you, it was done with this kind of propaganda that you see over here, and to which we have an absolute human and God-given and natural right to defend ourselves. And I'm telling you again, I deserve a medal for doing what I'm doing, and compensation. And one day I'll get it. You believe me? Because the Holocaust, as you and I have been told, is crumbling. There are hundreds of books already written around the world by hundreds of reputable scholars, just as reputable as some of these jerks here, you know? And their figures don't jive at all with somebody else's figures, you know? And I'm telling you, it is terrorism, psychological terror on an international scale, involving murder, bombs, assassinations, threats of assassinations, beatings, and so on. And you know, they have all been documented. And in each case, virtually in each case, they were Jewish individuals ethnically who perpetrated the deeds.
Can I ask you something? How do you feel about someone like me? I mean...
I don't feel either way. You're a rather pretty, open-faced young woman. You say you're half Jewish. You come to me. You want information. I'm giving you the information.
But I mean...
You personally are totally immaterial to me. You are just like me. We are a vessel for a truth or for a lie. You know, I'm sharing with you 25 years of hard-earned
Well, can you imagine
research.
how I feel when I hear you talk about, you know, an international...
You should feel elated. You should feel elated.
I don't feel like I'm part of any international
Because
conspiracy.
no, very few people are. Otherwise it would cease to be a conspiracy. Don't be so naive. You know? Don't be so naive.
But
I don't
you
expect that
think-
Maya Kahane calls you up at night and says, now go down and demonstrate outside Zundel Place at 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning, shout, dance the horror, sing, and make sure that he can get a decent night's sleep.
But you think that this conspiracy is a Jewish conspiracy?
Do I think there's a Jewish conspiracy? There are thousands of conspiracies, if you want to put it that way. I think the OPEC oil cartel is a conspiracy. against the industrialized nations. I think the bankers with their interest rates obviously have a conspiracy going. Otherwise, one bank wouldn't have the same interest rate as all the other banks. You know? Let's not be ridiculous. But are there a bunch of learned elders of Zion with long flowing white beards and black kaftans, with fingernails long as claws, dripping with blood, figuring out whether Ernst Zundel is going to be bombed or not bombed? No, I don't believe that at all. Not for 1 minute. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother to do what I'm doing. I'd be out there opposing them with the same methods.
Can I ask you something about yourself, like
Sure.
your background? When were you born about? And
I was born in 1939, raised in the Black Forest in Germany, pious Christian home. My parents didn't have a clue what was going on in the world. I was a complete and firm believer in the Holocaust, lock, stock and barrel, felt guilty that the Germans allegedly did all these nasty things to those beautiful Jewish people, you know. I had to come to this country to find out that not all Jews were beautiful and not all Germans were nasty.
what changed you?
Information that was available only over here.
Did you meet someone or read?
I've traveled the world, my dear woman. I've traveled the world, interviewed some of the most interesting and famous Jews that you will ever meet and who you will meet if you're going to be participating in a court case. And here where I got my information from. I came up by my information the hard way. I too had to go to places like you did today, into the lion's den, face people that I was scared of and didn't know whether I was going to be beaten up or whatever, you know. Sure. I went through the route. I met ogres that I was, and I had to totally change my mind. You see, you're looking at a person who already has crossed the Rubicon. I used to believe in this lie, but truth and information set me free. You see? And once you have recognized the truth, it would be immoral and irresponsible and also, may I point out, illegal, because I would be an accessory to a fact. And one day, in the not too distant future, there will be people hauled into court in Canada and West Germany and America for being accessories to blackmail, terrorism, robbery, extortion, based on some of these Holocaust claims. You mark my word for it. The 1980s are going to see it. That's right.
But you think they're going to have Holocaust survivors in court, or people
Absolutely. Absolutely.
that
are getting pensions which they don't deserve, whose stories will not check out. Ernst Zundel is going to be the one straw that will break the camel's back. You just watch it.
What does that mean?
It means that the Holocaust story will be judged before Zundel and after Zundel.
Why is it so important to you?
It is the most important issue that this world obviously faces. If it wasn't, why do the Elie Wiesels, the Andras Schwarzbards, why does Raoul Hilberg, why does Dr. Michael Bar-Sohar, why does everybody else get involved in it? Why have specials, super specials, docudramas, documentaries? Why have plays, books, and everything else written on it? Over 100,000 books have been written about the Holocaust. Over 480, I think at last count, full-length feature movies, docudramas, and documentaries have been made on the Holocaust.
Do you not believe any of it? I mean, any of the
Of
stuff?
course, there was cruelty. I checked into that. Believe me, people were unjustly hurt. 10 million German people died in the most vicious and miserable way, including my own grandfather. You know? He was torn apart to shreds, looked like apparently spaghetti and meat sauce by an American aerial bomb. Am I forever going to blame the Americans for that? You know? How about those 17 million Germans who were driven from their homes, their ancestral homelands, where they lived for 800 years, where they drained the swamps, where they created the farms, where they pioneered the land, where they did all the things that Canadians did to this land? It was as unfair to drive those Germans out from Lithuania, Estonia, Poland, the Ukraine, Russia, Romania, Bulgaria, and so on. 17 million of them, without compensation. Now, you see, what we expect is justice and fair treatment. If you want to talk and bellyache about Holocaust, also talk about us, our Holocaust. Let's talk about the Jewish commissars and the Jewish commissars in the Soviet Union and the Jewish soldiers and the Jewish propaganda minister of Stalin, who said and gave special orders to kill my gallant Soviet soldiers, humble the German fascist beast in her lair, rape, pillage, and all this kind of stuff, which led to hundreds of thousands of murders and suicides and rapes of the most cruel kind. Now, we have the orders, we know where they issued from, we know the responsible officials. Why is nobody taking those people to account? You see? Either we have an amnesty for all crimes, or we talk about all crimes.
Well, but it doesn't, I mean, we're talking about the Holocaust right now, and...
What Holocaust? An exclusively Jewish Holocaust? The Second World War was a Holocaust for all of Europe and certainly for the Japanese. The Jews have no exclusive right on pain and tears and suffering. Let's get this straight.
No, but I think that people say that the magnitude of Jewish suffering was something quite beyond what other groups.
That's what Jews say.
And most historians.
Quote me one. Who is your most historian? No. Who is your most historian?
Well, you go to
a bunch of Holocaust racketeers.
You know.
Who?
I mean, if you go anywhere, like go to the Encyclopedia Britannica or established texts.
You know, it's the Ministry of Truth. Since we are talking in the Orwellian year of 1984. No, that's what it is. Whom's truth? Are my facts and the German people's facts? Forisson from France, his facts. Felderer from Sweden, his facts. Lilienthal from the United States, a Jew, his facts. Domergue, the French Jew, his facts. Not worthy to be looked at because they don't happen to please the people who are raking in billions of dollars with illegitimate, illegal gains that they squeeze out of these subject populations through propaganda and terror? No, my dear young woman. There is going to be a change. And the change is going to be initiated from the city of Toronto. And we are doing it. Truth is going to shatter their entire racket. Yeah.
Are you planning to do something? I mean, we're just...
What do you mean, planning to do something? Do you think this is all unpremeditated, what I have been doing for 25 years? The fact that you came here obviously proves that there's somebody interested in doing the Canadian Jewish Congress. You wouldn't be taping it if somebody didn't want to listen to it. Right? You wouldn't want to spend and blow the money on the grant.
Hopefully somebody's going to listen to it.
Yeah. It is disgusting. What is happening in Canada is disgusting. It is dishonest that we, the Canadian Jewish Congress, one of his organizations, got, I think it was $700,000 worth of a grant to establish a Holocaust data bank. There was no attorney there. Neutral attorney. No, hold on. There was no neutral attorney there to check these people who were giving their hearsay evidence. They were just reminiscing. For all I know is they were transfixed by having seen all these sadomasochistic movies which some of their brethren are producing out of Hollywood and underground movies about the Holocaust, and they were barfing forth into these video cameras all these lies that our children are going to be subjected to because somebody in Ottawa found it politically expedient to give those people unbridled license to publish and broadcast their lies.
Can we talk about your charge for a second? Did you feel happy about the post office case, about the outcome of that? Were you...
Did I feel happy about it?
Yeah, were you content with
I felt vindicated.
decision?
No, I was absolutely not. It is not the end for me as far as I'm concerned. Somebody is going to pay for depriving me for 1 year of my privilege of receiving and sending out mail. Any man that communicates through the mails, which is what I do, that unjustly gets deprived of this right for a whole year is grievously injured, maliciously prosecuted by a conspiracy hatched behind the scenes by the same woman who laid the next charge against me.
How do you feel about like John Ross Taylor and his losing his telephone privileges and so on? What about that? Did you ever listen to his message?
I couldn't be bothered to call up the message. And already you can see if somebody has to go to the trouble to dial some old man's hate message or whatever you want, informational message, the principle itself, to me, is what counts. And that is that in this country we are so fast in banning things because we are so afraid of what some guy might say that isn't popular. We are the most over-regulated society. We are the most over-legislated society. And I think it's basically due because we have nothing but lawyers and accountants sitting in Parliament virtually, you know?
Mostly lawyers.
Well, it's certainly symptomatic, and you can usually tell the health of any civilization by the amount of laws that it passes, you know? And we think by throwing a law in a paragraph in the face of some problem, that's going to solve the problem. It won't solve the problem. It won't solve the problem, believe me. Just as little as the hate paragraph, which the Jewish side basically rammed and railroaded through Parliament.
You mean the hate section?
Exactly right. Why don't you go back to the... I've got all the files on how the hate law was peddled and promoted and by whom it was started and initiated and all this kind of stuff. It has nothing to do with the Canadian will of the public. It's a special interest law created and demanded for by special people, and now they're not happy with it either.
But the people on the committee were people like Pierre Trudeau and Tamis Cohen, Mark...
Who 1 year later became elected Man of the Year by the, I think it was Canadian Jewish Congress or somebody.
But it wasn't...
What does that mean? What does it mean?
It wasn't totally a Jewish committee. It was...
No, of course not. Of course not. Of course not. You know how many sat in the committee that banned booze in the United States? How many members of the Temperance League do you think were in Congress passing the law against prohibition? Well, okay, look, there's the answer for you. Don't be so goddamn naive. You know? Lobbies are the ones that get laws passed. And parliamentarians and congressmen usually rubber stamp it with one eye over their shoulder towards the next election and for their next campaign contribution. That's also a fact of life, ain't it?
You can understand that it's a bit difficult for me to really identify or sympathize with.
I'm not interested in convincing you or sweeping you off your feet. You came in for some information and you are getting plenty.
But especially since I've seen Holocaust survivors. And
yeah.
Do you want me to wait and I've talked to
no
people?
No problem. Is your table still running?
No. I think mine probably ran out ages ago, dear. Did you hear it stop?
No.
No, not an hour yet. This 2-hour tape's not half over yet.
No? Okay, good. Well, there you go.
And you used the whole thing?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. So did I only get half of this?
Well,
I'm telling you, I'm very, very bad with...
Okay, well then fine. We'll see what we share with you and what we'll censor. Being Germans, we have to live up to our reputation.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, I understand
and especially
it perfectly.
since I've met Holocaust survivors and I've met people who aren't Jewish who've told me about some of the stuff that happened, and it's quite devastating to hear people talk about it.
Do you want me to set up a meeting for you with survivors of bombing raids, of rapes, liberation, refugees? You wouldn't goddamn well be interested because you're all so emotionally hung up and wrought out by these Holocaust lies that you're like Pavlov's dogs. No. You begin to salivate when you see a survivor. A Jewish survivor, of course. Don't let these people be Germans. Don't let those women that are living out here on Dunn Avenue that I can bring to you, who only when they hear a Russian sound begin to shake uncontrollably because they were so brutally raped so many times. Nobody ever has cared about their psychological pain. All the women's libbers, all the Gloria Steinems and the Bella Abzugs didn't have one kind word for them. Our survivors don't get their emotions milked and their feelings, if you want to, masturbated. You know? That's solely the preserve of those people who also get financially compensated. Now, why don't you go and interview some Gentile psychologist and ask him what the effect and the trauma would be on German women that get raped by Allied troops and Allied soldiers?
Well, my topic isn't the war. My topic is hate propaganda.
Well, okay then. How do you think they are being affected by these lies that are being broadcast over television? Why don't you go and interview some mothers? I'll be happy to bring them to you, whose kids have been taken out of school, who call me in tears from all over the province of Ontario because their kids are once again subjected to beatings and spittings and letters being sent to them. You know? Threats. Why don't you? Why always only investigate the Holocaust from the Jewish side and hate propaganda directed against them? We have in this city of Toronto an ethnic police group it's called the Jewish Ethnic Squad, that comes around when somebody says something not very nice about the Jews. They are there. I haven't heard And there are, numerically speaking, just about as many Germans in Toronto as there are Jews. There are no two Jewish policemen going around running interference for the Germans.
And you think there's just as much of a need for it?
I think we'll still terminate the interview here. You haven't learned anything in a whole hour. You are so blind and so deaf, even to my explanations, that after an hour you don't see it. What can my pamphlets that I send out to a few newspapermen, what can one old man, John Ross Taylor's telephone message that the individual has to call, how can you compare that even against a TV program like the Holocaust that was pumped into Canadian homes in prime time, day after day, evening after evening, where schools were forced, entire classes were forced to watch it, you know? Can you compare that? Don't you see the relationship in the magnitude of this? You can't see that, eh? That's a sign of brainwashing. Let me ask you a question. How many Canadians died in the Second World War?
I don't know.
How many Jews died in the Second World War?
An exact number?
No, give me the figure that is usually given. 6 million.
Approximately 6
All
million.
right. What does that say to me? What does it say to you? You couldn't answer the losses of this country. You obviously went to the Canadian school system. You are a lawyer, you're a graduate of university, and you are such a pitiful wretch that you know the losses of some ethnic group, but you don't know.
Is that unusual?
You don't.
Know the losses
But
of
you
my own
ought to.
ethnic
You
group?
ought to expect that you also know the losses of the country where you're residing, and otherwise you're once again open to the charge that you are a Jew first and a Canadian only second.
I don't think that's true though, because it's so well publicized.
Why isn't it so well publicized if the Holocaust was so horrendous and the war so terrible that we have peace demonstrations every day on Parliament Hill and everything else? How come that the sacrifice and the life spent by those Canadians is not worth your attention as a young woman, that you don't concern yourself enough with it, that you would know how many people died? But yet you know down to the last 2 how many died. Don't you see the brainwashing in that?
Not really. I don't really agree with you. I understand what you're saying, but I think there's a difference.
There is no difference. It is as a sign of a sickness. It is as sick, this constant harping away at 6 million in Canada, in America, and in the Western world, as it would be for the Red Chinese if they were broadcasting day in and day out. If a foreign visitor came there and he turned on the TV set at night and flicked around to the various channels, and they were always talking about the tragedy suffered by the Northern Irish at the hands of the Southern Irish, the losses, the concentration camps, the suffering, the potato famine. You know what a foreign visitor would say to that? The Chinese are crazy. They're absolutely stark-raving mad. Why are they so concerned 50 years after the events about what happened to potato farmers in Ireland in far-off China? It is the same thing about the Holocaust.
See, you see that as a symptom of me being brainwashed or something, that I know the number is 6 million. But you see, there is a difference. And when I think of Canadians that died during World War II, they weren't murdered because they were Canadians. They weren't murdered for their nationality.
But you are assuming that.
That's what I've learned.
That's propaganda. See?
And whereas the reason the figure 6 million stands out with Jews, where the reason that particular issue seems like an important issue, is because those people were murdered purely because of their race. And I think there's a very profound difference between those two situations. That's why one has captured my attention and the other hasn't.
Right. But it's a reasonable argument.
So
Such a standard argument I hear all the time. So please forgive me, since you know you say my own ethnic group, if I also go and pinch it for my ethnic group, is far more propagandized against, has far fewer champions, because we have no Barbara Fromm on the CBC Journal that will get on every bleeding, lying heart about this story and that story, you know. We have no Larry Solves, we have no, what's the fellow on Channel 9 that I mentioned before, who interviewed Simon Wiesenthal? Norm Perry, you know. We don't get the Bentleys and everybody else giving us airtime, you know. We are the ones that are constantly under attack. And when a guy like Ernst comes up and against all this damn opposition publishes a few corrections of obvious and flagrant errors. I can give you a typical case in point. The Toronto Star published an article, a photograph plus a caption. When the Ralph case broke in Chile, the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Sun said that Ralph was responsible for the execution of 97,000, naturally totally unproven, but that's what the claim was. The Toronto Star had 250,000 under the same picture in the same newspaper the same day. I wrote to the Office of Accuracy, naturally, inside the Toronto Star. I don't think I need to bore you with a lack of reply. I have had none. No. An absolute, flagrant, obvious lie. No retraction. There are 700,000 readers of the Toronto Star who were misinformed deliberately. It wasn't an extra zero that was 970,000, like a typo. Somebody deliberately changed within the Toronto Star the caption on that photograph, which obviously came from some wire service, because the Globe and Mail and Toronto Sun and all the other papers that I have from my clipping file reported it correctly, but oh no, the Toronto Star, somebody there changed it to 250,000, and not anybody. And I published that and circulated it through the entire Toronto media. Not one single one of those guardians of truth has retracted 10 or changed the number. And the German people, once again, in this community and in this country, because it's a national newspaper, stand falsely accused and slandered. Now, naturally, Toronto Star will pounce down on me if ever they get a chance to write something nasty about me, to get back at me, for me daring to put the mirror of inaccuracy into their face, for telling them to clean up their act, to stop writing these lying stories, which they print time and again. You know? Of course, they will want to destroy the accuser, just the way that McMurtry is doing. You know, if the power of the state falls on me, plus the power of the media here, they might for a moment thwart the truth from coming out. But I can assure you, I do about 150 interviews a year in the United States, Canada, Australia, West Germany. Roughly 300 million people hear my voice annually. 300 million people.
That's
live, uncensored, in talk shows, interview shows, from Hawaii to Texas and everywhere else, you know. And they will not censor me. And if anything should happen to me, I have made already undertaken steps that for my life insurances that will come due, the world will be flooded with material which I at this moment do not publish because I want to live. But believe me, if they think that by killing me or by silencing me...
You think that somebody's out to kill you?
Well, if you...
Always put bombs in the place for no reason.
Yeah, they just put bombs in, yeah, and attack me in the courthouse steps, right? Kill them. If you'd like to have some soundtrack tapes, we'll give them for you, you know? Do
you think you'll win your case? Do 177?
I think everybody in the world that goes into court hopes that he's going to win the case. Do I think I'll win it? I have every intention of winning it, yeah.
What would you do if you lost?
Appeal it to the highest court in the land. And if I go to jail, I won't be the first one, but I'll tell you one thing. Those who initiated it and those who are behind it, they will come away from this scrap with Ernst Zundel, leaving so many feathers in the courtroom that they wish they would have never tackled the issue. But evil will not triumph. Yeah.
Well, on that note.
Yeah, you will remember this interview. Believe me. You will. Because these people are through. Yeah.
Interesting.
Los Angeles Night Breath Messenger.
What's that?
It's a clipping from the Los Angeles Night Breath Messenger, where a Jew by the name of Benjamin Chappelle says, "Crying wolf. The world will soon tire of hearing us crying wolf." That's his quote, eh? Or in this case, crying Holocaust. And the end result will be that Jews will no longer be able to fall back on the safety of the Holocaust crutch. You know, they say here, there are signs that the crutch is beginning to erode. Now, this is from the United States. I can bring descent clipping from West Germany, from France, from Australia, and from Canada, where another wise, rather high standing Jew said the same thing. It's for me to know and for you to find out. You do the research. But I'm telling you that the world will find out that these people have been cloaking themselves, and you know what's going to happen. Anger can be very creative. Believe me, there's enough people out there, and I know it through my many interviews that I've conducted over all the years in my speaking engagements and the question periods. All this one day is going to backfire. And all the horrible crimes that these diabolical scriptwriters have portrayed on television shows that the Germans allegedly committed against the Jews, some nutcase, some mental case is going to commit against those people. You know that? And it made no difference. 20 years ago I warned against that in public speeches and radio programs. To watch their step, to watch what they were doing. Oh no. They want to vomit forth their lies. I don't know if you've seen that particular one where this Nazi comes up from Argentina and he drills this poor person's teeth, you know, and all this. You know?
That's Laurence Olivier and that's Marathon Man.
Yeah, all right. No, things like that, and far worse, the one with the flamethrower, the fiendish rapes and the butchering and all this stuff. I'm telling you, you will see some slob, some vicious anti-Semitic slob will pick up on that theme because video cassettes will be played to them by armies, you know, when the tide turns, as they will in some countries, you know. And I'm telling you, these horrible crimes that normal people could not perceive, but into the feverish, overexcited, dope-riddled brains of these scriptwriters come up with those things, you know. Chainsaw massacres and all this stuff. I'm telling you, one day, you're young enough to remember it, and I'm young enough to. You're going to head for a world. If the cops now are worrying about all this violence against policemen, because 1 or 2 films are out about this, you know, can you imagine what has been stored up in the collective psyche of society?
I think that's going to trigger some action.
Can you not see that? Doesn't that concern you? Doesn't anybody in your multiculturalist ministry ever check into that?
Violence concerns me. I'm concerned with the portrayal of violence
on
television.
Now,
sure.
If a cop can get murdered by one man seeing an anti-cop film, how about all those Germans that have been portrayed and killed so viciously and so brutally in so many films? If you'd like to now, we'll show you some video clips.
Sure.
You know?
That'd be interesting.
Okay.
I'm gonna shut this off.
Yeah, sure.
I hope that I got everything.
Yeah, we'll sit over there.
We'll sit over here.
Sure. What am I seeing?
These are just
Clips of anti-German, what we consider to be anti-German film.
Oh,
It's, of course, the opening of the film, so you know which film it is. Right?
now you can go to any video rental place.
And get them, because that's where we got them.
Yeah.
Some of it is got TV, some of it didn't come in video at all.
What is this? Is this?
Movies.
This what?
Movies.
Popularly and publicly available movies.
Some
broadcast.
compilated.
That's right.
Yeah. This one is not only available on videotape, it's also been played on television umpteen times.
Which we have presented to Canadian government authorities, and you will note here Mr. Greenberg's name right off the bat. Yeah. Produced with Canadian government support, Canadian government cooperation.
All these actors are Canadians. Kate Reid.
That's right. And what if this is an anti-German hate, what is it?
Yeah, just wait till it unfolds. See how we're gonna go.
This is a setback during the war.
That's good.
It's modern day.
It's like The Boys from Brazil. Vicious movie. Every time some person is in a shopping mall and hears guy with the guttural accent, the night after he sees this kind of a film, he must be wondering, this is one of Hitler's clones and agents, you know? That's how it looks to us, you see? Because we are the objects of suspicion. To you, it's just a film. You as a person obviously have an emotional detachment, which is commendable. But then after all, you have got 4 years of law school behind you, I suppose, plus a pretty good education. But other people react with their guts, you know? Canadian film. Well, it certainly isn't. It was financed with Canadian government
All
money.
you have to do is go into any video store, pull that out of the shelf, and look at the card they usually have how many people have rented it. Thousands of rented it.
Yeah. Also, some Canadian government officials who okayed the renting and the Coast Guard and the cooperation and so on was during the time of slavery. It was perfectly socially acceptable to be holding slaves and beating slaves, you know, because it was part of the social
See
life.
now, here,
Who are?
listen.
Wherever the officer, he doesn't care about the ship. What nationality can they be? How about German? German, look. Look at this. It says, this place came from Italy, I think. It's German.
Sorry.
Me too.
3 times. 3 times the opposite German in there, right?
Would you call this, I mean, would you call that hate?
Of course. It is negatively stereotyping the Germans as being monsters, vicious.
As a matter of fact, the one Jewish lawyer, Greenspan in Ottawa, he defined hate as creating an intense dislike.
Sure.
So there you go, this is obviously hate.
You're going to try, but I have to go.
Good.
Right when you show me the movies, I have to go,
No
right?
problem.
Although, just skip up to the other part.
We'll go and see there.
Skip the part about the Nazi candies here, where she all bursts out and plague and dies over them.
Get to the torture chamber, that's a process.
He kills her.
Nice chamber kills you, huh?
Long work. Oh, God. Sure.
There he is changed into the Nazi uniform, right?
Take the shit from you.
There we go. She gets stuck in the shower.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute. Looks like it's stuck.
And of course, they do to the second German national anthem of the times back in the old days, right?
You've seen the film under The Man in the Glass Booth?
Yes, excellent film.
Fantastic
The
acting.
acting is excellent.
Fantastic acting. Now there is Maximilian Schell brilliantly, convincingly acting this German, and I have never seen more diabolical than that. You know? Now, 90% of the film is all these nasty things that he says the Germans did, and how Hitler liberated our psyche through death and all this bullshit, you know? And then, for about 1/5 or maximum 1/10 of the film, he suddenly turns into a Jew, you know, and such a nice Jew that you even feel sorry for him then. That was broadcast last week,
Yeah, it is,
you know.
he's fantastically convincing in the
Right.
film.
No, it's lies. It's lies. It's a totally fictitious story. It's absolute lies. You know? Yet, if you were to take a sampling of people watching that, they'd be so enthralled, they would say, my God, can you imagine that? And if you were to show that film to a jury one day before they have to pass the verdict on me, they'd find me guilty. You see? No, that's the viciousness of propaganda, you know? And if they can do that to the Germans for 40 years and get away with it, whoever these people are, someday, somebody will once again have the power and this way over them and will do it to them. And this vicious circle will never end. And it's up to this generation, if we have learned anything at all from the Second World War, to change it into end. And we have to do it through kindness and through truth, even if the truth hurts. Now here, I've got a torture chamber, you know, toothless skulls, see, there.
And one passing thought, under mass murder, look in Guinness Book of Records. And see who you find. You won't find Hitler. He's not even mentioned. Who is in there is the communists.
That's right.
Number one, Mao Zedong. Number two, Joseph Stalin. They're the biggest mass murderers. So why do we have all these stories? If we want to, you know, deplore murder and violence and war and stuff, why don't we make movies about them? Because they're not. I mean, certainly the starving to death, the beatings and the tortures, all the stuff that ever happened to all those people under those communist regimes was just as bad as anybody considered themselves. Nobody else.
Exactly right.
I don't think that's true.
Well, that's just what you said. All these 40 million people don't mean nothing. Just because these people
I didn't say that.
that you think, you just did say it. You didn't even notice you said it. You just said it.
No, I would never say that. It's gross. It's horrible.
Yes, it is.
That's
And
exactly how we feel about it.
I think there is
Until the day that there's an equal number of films produced by Jewish writers who dominate many of these networks and so on, the producers, like Chomsky and these people, the day when Ernst Zundel will be demonstrating outside the German consulate and outside the Jewish consulate in support of the Israelis, then I will believe that they have changed and they produce films about us. If it's all this special pleading and belly aching about their own kind only, you will excuse me if I think that they're being slightly unfair. And until such
I
time,
may
you
not
will
agree
see.
with you. I really appreciate
Well,
you
fine,
meeting with me, and
fine.
it's
I know
very, very interesting.
I know I'm right, and truth is on my side. I might have power on me.
I didn't say.
I wouldn't have power on my side for the moment. That'll come later.
I have to unplug myself
Good.
here.
No problem.
I mean, I haven't eaten any lunch. I'm just starving.
Good. Let's unplug this stuff here for you then.
Pardon?
We'll unplug all this stuff here for you. See, was the Kaiser on trial in 1918?
We have a good library here. I have a lot of.
Makes no difference. What the Germans can't do anything right, you know.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't feel that way.
Here.
Now, you see, if
You
you
know
had
that, don't you?
Yeah.
if you had had the time, we would have shown you these other clips on there.
Yeah.
Not of
Maybe
nothing
when
to
they
do.
come back.
No Nazis here, right? The Kaiser had so many Jews in his cabinet that possibly Jews coming out of his ears. Bayonet ladies, shooting Red Cross nurses, right, getting nuns to do indecent things, carrying a dagger, a torch to burn Nazi glass items, singing hospital shirts. Every crime is the First World War. How long is
And
hate
when
from
that was,
But you see,
But the British Empire, it's a book that you can buy here, Mighty Content, right? It's a Nazi book, not a Jim Keekstar book. British Broadcasting Corporation.
and the other movies here, the clips that we had here was a movie made about the Civil War,
Sure.
and the only nasty guys in there were Germans. Showed that way.
Sure.
Another one about some Mexican Revolution, 1917.
I'm trying to
The
think.
nasty guys. Who were the nasty guys? The Germans,
Sure.
etc., etc. It's got nothing to do with Nazis.
See?
Nazis, Germans.
It was
Germans
famous
were
in
Nazis.
border wars, you're already aware of it. Over and over again used. How many captions have I got in my files
You
from any of
recently
the
watched that new show from Out of Space, the beam.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I heard about that.
Well, didn't you get some resemblance in it?
This person.
You don't have to. You don't
Their
have to.
their
You
their
don't have
their,
to look
their
for it.
emblem
Victim of gas.
resembled the
He was
swastika.
released within very
When
it was
these first came
released
out, the
within
original
very few hours.
Yeah.
the write-up and TV guide stuff, they said
What the
that's why
picture conjures up.
everything look as Germanic as possible.
No?
Yeah, yeah.
So this
So
concept
and that's what it is.
is
That's why I like
German
it.
brutality that they would have no
The opinion of one of you, I have
that man lived and prospered
editing
another
suite
survivor.
furniture in my car.
So am I. It is vicious, no? It is vicious to misrepresent through propaganda and repetition for 40 years
Drawers where the machine
a
is
falsehood.
above each other, but in
It is misrepresented. Because he has been in various places represented as having been, before they were rounded up for the gas chambers, before they were rounded up to the concentration
No one knew
camps.
what happened.
Pardon?
No one knew what happened to them. It's not routine.
It did not happen to them, period. That's the point. He is symbolic because it didn't happen. He was a kid caught up in a black market raid, of which the Canadians and the Allies conducted many after the war in Germany. What you are seeing
I
here,
still see him as a victim, I guess.
but of course, because you have lived with
No,
this,
because he's standing there with his hand up and some way you get at it. That's a victim to me. I mean, whether he died or whatever.
with your research plan, have the intellectual honesty. Go down when you make a question to find out how many Canadians can separate Nazis from Germans, and find out what they think that this little boy, the story of this little boy. Get the reaction of the public. Yeah.
One
You
day
won't-
I'll do that.
No, you won't have the honesty to do it.
That's not my topic.
I understand.
Do you understand?
No.
My topic.
I understand it.
My topic
yeah.
isn't whether the Holocaust happened. My topic is what is hate propaganda.
This is hate propaganda. That's what I'm trying to illustrate to you. If you don't investigate, if you're going to go and investigate a little pamphlet here like Hickstra and Ernst Zundel,
You see, what I'm doing, I'm talking about the prosecutions that are going on. I'm talking about what the section says. I'm not launching into a study. I wish I could, you know, of all the different kinds.
I
of
asked the
hate.
Multicultural Ministry also for a grant. Not in 81 already.
I don't suppose he said
No,
yes.
Mr. Teitelbaum would rather support his own, I suppose.
Well, he's not the one who gave the grant. He had nothing to do with it. He's an employee. Yeah, he's
But I didn't get one. You got one. Right?
well, Congress and you know,
Right.
and
Okay.
that's the grant that they determined.
All right. Now, on what basis was the decision made? Some
Well,
emotional
it's
thing
really
once
good.
again?
It's a generic project. It's not a Jewish project. I mean, you have to give me credit for coming and.
No, I understand it perfectly. But
I
what
don't-
I'm saying to you is, if I sound somewhat teed off, it is basically that everything is stacked against us. The government already has given $700,000 to establish a Holocaust data bank.
Mr. Maybe more people would have sympathy if. Do you mind me saying that?
No,
Okay.
I don't care.
If instead of it's I should put that.
I can take it. It's not the first time.
Concentrate on
Oh,
you think that there's a lot of anti-German propaganda. As in
I don't
films
think it.
and
I've
stuff.
just proven it to you.
And I think it's it is terrible. Like you see a lot of stereotyping in films and so on.
How many Jewish stereotypes do you see?
Ah.
Show me one. Give me one. No, not 10.
I
One.
can give you classic ones.
Never mind the
Shylock.
classic one, Shylock. How many kids are seeing Shylock on television every night,
I
as
just
compared to miniseries on the Holocaust?
I just saw a film the other day, Bonnie Heat, where
Mhm.
they have the lawyer, the Jewish lawyer who's interested in the money. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like it's there. It really is the same thing, but it works both ways.
It doesn't work both ways. The Jewish script writers are barfing all over society with the sick outpourings of their minds. That's right. And I was perfectly willing to share it with you.
But there's
As
a lot
I-
of Jewish scriptwriters as well. I mean, it's not.
Well, as
They have
only
a
they have to compete and to survive, and they have to outdo the others. You know, I have got in my files here a Montreal Star story where they awarding already one another first prize, second prize, best prize for atrocity writing. They're Jews. I can show them to you. I can give them to you by name, by what stories that they wrote, what their prize money was. A competition for atrocity writers. Doesn't that say something to you? Can you
I
be
don't know anything about
no?
it.
But can you look? Can your mind be so closed to so many things that in evidence are before you that you cannot see the problem?
Well, all I can
I
do
am
is-
only the reaction to all this outpouring. You know? That's what it is. I came to this country, married a French Canadian girl, had 2 sons, established a business, did very well, and still do very well. You know?
What do you do, by the way? Are you a
I'm an
coach
artist.
or-
Yeah. Well, I've sold over 600 paintings, many of them to Jews. See? For many, many years, I was the honored guest, you know, as long as I believed in the Holocaust. See? The moment when suddenly I was an outcast is when I decided truth got in the way. Anyways, I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you very much.
And,
It was nice of you.
Who's my counterpart at the Congress these days? Since Ben Kavitz has retired. You know who it is?
There's a man named Manuel Prucci from Winnipeg. Winnipeg is that's where I
home base.
I'm originally from. Yeah, his name is Manuel Prucci. I don't really know him, but Mr. Kavitz is retired.
Yeah.
You probably know him.
Yeah, well, he is into censoring people. In 1945, I've got it in Who's Who in Canadian Jury there, World Jury. He's in there as being a censor. And he's still into censoring, you know.
I'm leaving you your pen.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Be interested. Look,
I'm off. I may show up at the trial and
oh yeah, fine. You and half the world.
yeah, there's going to be a lot of people there, don't you?
Oh yeah.
Watching.
Well,
It's quite the issue.
I've already invited Taz Nobos,
Really?
oh yeah, from as far away as Peking in Singapore.
Really?
The people coming from Japan.
It's going to be a big issue.
Oh, yeah,
The
this
media
is-
will be there.
Oh yeah, this is it. Every member of parliament from West Germany, every member of parliament from Austria has been informed that the trial is coming up, what the issues are in the trial, has extended an invitation, they've been given phone numbers and addresses of hotels that they can stay. Yeah.
So do you think there'll be huge? You think
There
there'll be a
will
lot of
be,
people?
oh, there will be already I know that there are service coming from LSA.
Are you going to Keekstra's trial? Or are you
I basically went to Keekstra's trial to monitor the performance of the attorney there to see how it was being fought. As long as others are allowed to teach their lies, then one more, even if you were telling a lie, one more lie makes no difference. You know? There's no balance in the presentation of these World War II facts, and if we want to have a world in peace and justice for all, the world will not make us genocide maniacs, believe me. There's too many Germans with too much dynamism in them and too much creativity. We will not go down in history as the genocide maniacs. You know? Sure, yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye. It's nice meeting you.
Same here.